Welcome back to
Oh, that was
another
fast.
episode of Token Narratives. My name is Graham Stone, and I'm joined as usual by Bitcoin.com News' research and gigabrain, Mr. David Sensel. How you doing, David?
Pretty good.
All right.
Happy Friday. Beautiful weather here. Hopefully the weekend will be nice. I just laid some turf, so I want that sun.
Laid some turf. Is that a euphemism for something?
No. I bought some turf grass, some sod, and I laid it out.
Oh,
And
I
so
see. Okay.
I'm hoping for some sunlight.
He's saying all the great words: turf, sod.
And we're also joined by Les Borsai. Les, you are the co-founder of Wave Digital Assets. Is that right?
That's correct.
It says here in your bio that you have advised the United Nations.
I didn't advise the United Nations. I think someone got that bio wrong. I have spoke at the United Nations on behalf of digital currencies in Austria about a narrative about public-private relationships with government.
It's close enough. I'd call that an advisor.
I guess it kind of is now that I think about it. It was kind of advising the room at the time.
Yeah. So, and Les, you know a lot about the whole confiscated assets, the Bitcoin and crypto confiscated assets. So we're going to be grilling you on that at some point. But first, let's just talk about the markets, right? So the crypto Twitter timeline is in abject poverty at this point. All the shitcoin traders crying. Bitcoin's down at pretty low here, like 108. I believe we had that obviously massive crash that happened last week, the biggest like derivatives blowout,
biggest
in crypto history.
Yeah, biggest notional drop. But I mean, the market's just much bigger than it was. So,
all right. So, what's your gut check here, guys? Are we going lower on the Bitcoin? Is it all noise?
I'm going to have a very unpopular opinion, but David, I'll give you the floor before I give you my unpopular opinion.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I like we talked about earlier this week, Graham. I saw this crash happening the day after because I'm in Asia, same as you, and so I was like, oh, Bitcoin dropped a little bit, and then alts dropped a lot. So looking at the broader markets, nothing looked that bad. So I don't know. I initially didn't think it was anything, but man, what you've seen on the timeline this past week is just, I think, a lot of I don't know, bearish takes. Where I am right now personally is a lot of the macro people that I follow are kind of almost evenly split in terms of the course of the economy moving forward, and I'm talking about like not just the crypto economy. So I'm a little less bullish for the short to medium term right now as I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going to happen. A lot of people I know are very, very bullish. And then some of these people that I follow who are also very respectful are kind of getting bearish. I think you're going to be talking about one of them here in a little bit. So for the first time in a while, I'm like, is this just because we dropped? So people are kind of upset and butthurt. And so you're hearing a lot of complainers, or are we in for some like rocky roads ahead?
I mean, I think my position is I'm not going to feel either way about it. So having been in, digital currencies as long as I have now, which is 2013, we've seen a lot of, bull and bear markets. My business partner, who's, steeped in deep finance and, was an M&A banker and sold his own bank, he has lots of strong opinions. And what I've learned along the way is everyone has strong opinions and no one really knows what the fuck is going on as it really, is connected to this asset class. So, what I look at is what's the underlying technology? How's that going to improve, lives of others and innovation? And I stay consistent with that, and I don't get caught up in all the, noise that's on X and other places. Because to be honest with you, I don't care. I like the technology. I like the adoption. I like the institutional adoption. And every asset class has these situations. And I'll take it one step further. To me, it's about suitability and risk. If you don't have an appetite for it, you're taking the risk to have large returns. If you don't have an appetite for it, then go invest in something conservative like a T-bill. And that's it for me.
All right. So
Graham, it
Les is
sounds
in it
like
for the
Les
tech.
is. Yeah, I was about to say that, Graham. He's unironically in it for the tech.
Well, not
That's what
Graham,
people
what about
say
you?
when you're in a bear market.
well, hang on. I wouldn't say I'm in it for the tech, because it's not exactly the tech that I'm really, driven by. I'm in it for the innovation, but for me, that can be financial innovation. It doesn't have to be tech. It can be, the emergence of financial instruments that have never existed before, whether that's, taking from other kinds of markets and creating derivatives that just haven't existed, and those can, be adopted and become something that's really pretty interesting and sustainable. I'm in it for the widespread adoption.
Okay.
Graham, are you in it for the widespread adoption, or are you just here to get filthy rich?
Well, obviously money is important, and I want to make money. But I also care about the world, David, believe it or not.
I don't think David.
And
No,
I mean,
I always make it a joke.
Yeah. Has Bitcoin changed the world? Will cryptocurrency change the world? I have hope for that. Especially the privacy angle.
Well, hasn't it already changed the world a little bit? I mean, I remember bank wires being a pretty complicated thing, and to see stables that are able to trade, 24 hours, go cross border, those little details of, innovations, DeFi and smart contracts, taking out central, financial authorities. I mean, those are little changes that, dependent upon bigger adoption, can change the world in significant ways, especially in, markets that don't have access to capital, or, where their native dollars don't have value. So, I mean, slowly but surely, it'll change a lot.
Yeah. I really like the idea of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency being this censorship resistant form of money, this money that can't be controlled by the government, and people can use to do exactly what they want with. I mean, people often point to the example, like there's Alex Gladstein often talks about this, the check your financial privilege thing. Like in a lot of places, like there was that guy in Russia, I believe, who financed his campaign using Bitcoin payments. He wouldn't have been able. He was like cut off from the system. There's lots of examples like that, and that's a powerful thing. So I'm all for that, but of course, I also want the price to go up.
Well,
yeah.
I actually have a theory on that as well, sadly, because I have a theory on everything these days, because I'm old. So, I've been around for a minute. I did the ETH pre-sale, and, you can't really get it less expensive than then. And, the thing about being early is, it's advantageous for your personal economics, but you typically sell early as well. And there's a lot of grief that comes with that when you do that. But the lesson I learned from it was there's always something else that's coming. And if we're just naturally curious, we can find those other opportunities. So, the narrative of, Bitcoin, obviously, you take a look at the scarcity, and the economics make sense that it's going to be worth a lot, but the cost of entry is a lot. So what are the other things that are emerging right now, that you get involved in and invested in? Because really that's where you win. And once I figured that out, kind of after that ETH experience, I was able to look at things I was passionate about and find opportunity in the same way. So look, we're not going to see Bitcoin again, down at those prices, but you're going to find something else. That's my optimistic spin.
Yeah. That's one of the things we're doing here on Token Narratives, looking for the narratives, what's emerging. But we also talk a lot about Bitcoin here, and I think we should discuss here for a minute this increasing. Okay, gold is skyrocketing, right? And Bitcoin is flat. So in the last week, gold has increased by about 10% of its market cap. Which that if you like look at the market cap of gold, it's like $30 trillion or something, and it's so a 10% increase over the last week or so is like $3 trillion, which is greater than the entire market cap of Bitcoin. So gold just added an entire Bitcoin market cap in the last week. And like a lot of people are saying, and this is how I feel right now, that it's just a matter of time that for the Bitcoin will catch up. And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Well, David.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of thoughts. The first one is I listened to an interview with Michael Howell of Cross Border Capital. Awesome guy. I've mentioned him a bunch of times, and he was asked this exact question. And so I'll just repeat what he said because he's a lot smarter than me on this topic. Gold and Bitcoin on the short term tend to be what's it called? I forgot the name, but they're exactly uncorrelated. And then on the long term, they're very correlated. So what you see happen historically for since 2013, I think he said, is gold will go up, and during that time, Bitcoin will be flat or go down, and then Bitcoin will go up, and during that time, gold will be flat or go down slightly. And so if this thing holds as it has for the past whatever decade or so, then yeah, statistically, gold will have its run, and at some point it'll start to slow down, and then Bitcoin will catch up. And then over the long term, they look very, very tightly correlated. So that's one part. The second part is I forgot to put this in the docogram, but it's going to be in my newsletter. There was a great post I saw last night showing people lining up for a gold bullion um, business in like some city, uh like you would see people lining up for like a new Pokemon set or something like that, right? Like just lying down the street, um
To
and
buy gold
to me,
bullion.
to buy like coins of gold or whatever, right? Like, I mean, it that to me seems very, 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 very indicative of uh a too hot market, right? So I imagine when you have people lining up like they're buying, I don't know, Taylor Swift tickets, and they're to buy gold, you're probably reaching a point where the gold market's getting a little overheated. So I'd imagine that this would slow down soon.
I don't know. I kind of have two takes on it. I think, gold has been around 6,000 years. And, that's a pretty long head start, considering Bitcoin's been around since 2009. So, the adoption, the, aspect where, gold is a safe haven and a store of value. I mean, we've gotten there pretty fast. Bitcoin is a risk asset, kind of moving into a safe haven at times. We're on the right path with it, but I mean, how much can you expect in a decade when it hasn't had 6,000 years of adoption? I would say one other thing. There's no baseline understanding of digital currencies with older generations. I remember I was on a plane with this guy. He had come from traditional medallion cab business that he owned. He owned 100 medallions, and it completely imploded, and he lost all his money, and really wanted to understand Bitcoin. And I sat with him on that flight, and I explained it to him, and he had this comfort level. And we actually did a transaction on the plane, and he bought some Bitcoin on Coinbase. He set up an account, bought some Bitcoin on Coinbase. Now, he inherently naturally knew everything there is to know about gold, grew up with it, and as this generation underneath us, ages, gets older, and that generation underneath them, I think we'll see different adoption. We'll see different, market values And the thing about digital currencies and Bitcoin in particular is, I hate to harp on the technology aspect of it, but we don't send gold around the way we send Bitcoin around. So just by the viral nature of the way peer-to-peer currency is shared, you have to, I think the comparison I would want to look at, and I've never looked at it, is, how long did it take gold to hit that value? What were the dates where it really started becoming, this institutional store of value? And how is how's Bitcoin tracking? My guess, if I had to guess, is Bitcoin is outpacing the true, pace of gold by a lot. That's what my guess is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I
There's
mean, most
another
certainly.
wrinkle.
Go ahead, David. Most certainly, it's outpacing it because Bitcoin's been around. What did you say? What is it? 2009, I guess, right? And so, like 15 years. Obviously, gold's been around 6,000 years. It took more than 15 years for it to get to institutional adoption.
Right.
David, go ahead.
That's kind of my point.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. Also, yeah. I mean, I could talk about this all day. There's so many wrinkles to this. A couple things. Number one, gold. I get in a lot of arguments with gold bugs because they think of it as this kind of like pristine, I don't know, pure asset that like reigns in governments, and that has not been the case ever in history. Because what happens when you have a gold backed system? You debase the gold, and you see this every time throughout history, every single time. So there are like, I mean, gold is better in some ways as a store of value, but it's not infallible, right? You can't really debase Bitcoin, right? That's just not a thing that you can do. And you definitely do and have debased gold, and every government that has kind of become insolvent or been threatened by that, they do that, and that usually precipitates kind of the fall of their power. That's one. The other aspect is, like Les, you were saying, in a modern financial system, the idea that you're going to have the backing of that system be around a physical object that's really difficult to move around. Yeah, that to me, that is just a dream. That's and it'll never win. Maybe China's trying it. It looks like they might be trying it, depending on who you ask. Like they're really gonna try to capitalize their system based on gold. I don't see that system winning against one that where you can move around vast sums of money via the internet like everyone's used to. I mean, are we going to go back to like World War One, two days where you have fleets of carriers come, where one ship is just laden with tons of gold, so that two countries can kind of settle their accounts every month or two? I just think it's insane to think that's going to happen.
It's funny as you're talking about that. I just keep thinking about Michael Caine in The Italian Job, where they take the 4 Mini Coopers and stuff them full of gold. Yeah, I'm with you there. Carrying gold around is not easy.
I mean, one thing's for sure. Gold has had an incredible run here, a historic run over the last year or two. And a lot of people would say that is indicative of a shift. And the shift is that central banks, namely China, a few others like BRICS nations or whatever, Russia, whatever, India, they don't trust the US dollar anymore. They learned their lesson. The final straw that broke the camel's back was the seizure of Russia's assets at the outbreak of this latest war with Ukraine. And they're like, okay, we're done. We're not done. We're going to move away from the dollar, and we're going to instead buy gold. And for the first time since I believe the 90s, gold now exceeds the compared to U.S. Treasuries, the assets held by central banks around the world. more central banks are holding more gold now than they are treasuries, and that line was crossed very recently, and hasn't been crossed for quite a long time, like a generation. So you've got this big shift away from the US dollar, and right now it's expressing itself as gold.
I would argue with that though, Graham. I think that's the direction that China and some of these other countries are trying to go towards. But then on the other side of it, you have the thing that we've talked about all year long, Graham, which you're gonna love to hear, which is stable coins.
Yeah, I was
And
just
what
gonna,
are stable coins?
just gonna say
Stable
that.
coins are US dollars. And what are they really? They are US sovereign bonds. And so if Besant or Arthur Hayes or any of these other people are right, I mean, shoot, like the Lagarde, even if Lagarde is right, she's saying like stable coins are a threat to our existence. If all these people are right, England, the Bank of England is like worried about it, then you're going to see a massive, 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 massive increase of US sovereign bonds. Maybe the central banks won't be holding it, but it'll be like the US holding it, which will be even better for the US, right? Because it'll be directly under their purview. And you're just going to see the whole world flooded with stable coins. And the US is not going to have to push this onto the world because the people around the world want this, right? And this is why all these countries are so worried about it.
Well, and that's why Tether is so successful outside of the U.S. I mean, Tether is the biggest stablecoin in the world, backed by U.S. Treasuries and the dollar and
gold.
And well, yes, true. But at the end of the day, that's good for the dollar and treasuries, because with everything that the stablecoin legislation here, Genius Act, has opened up, we're just going to see, more of that deployment.
Yeah. Exciting times. Again, I just so everyone knows, I like gold. I own gold.
You both like gold. This is a very gold topic.
Yeah, I mean, gold is great. But I definitely think gold is honestly a worse asset than Bitcoin.
I don't really like gold. I don't even like the color of it.
Yeah.
My whole point here just is, look, the gold market, I think it's as you said, David, it's overheated. It's gone up a lot. And I think there's going to be a lot of the buyer. It's not just central banks who are buying it. There's retail frenzy now, as you pointed out with that anecdote with people lining up, like buying concert tickets, but instead they're buying gold coins. We're going to see, it's inevitable once this sort of gold euphoria peaks, that we're going to see a rotation into, I think, Bitcoin and other assets. So I just think that if your portfolio is like heavily balanced with gold right now, you might want to be skimming some off and funneling it into Bitcoin and crypto at these relatively depressed prices.
Yeah. I mean, in the long term, gold is going to do great, right? Like, I'm not saying it's not going to do amazing. It is. But I think on a relative basis, Bitcoin will do better. Obviously that's not that's not anything interesting or exciting for me to say. But one interesting note was, again, from this Michael Howell speech. So he was talking about how right now we're in the midst of kind of a reinvigorated capital war between China and the U.S. And China, it looks like, is really, 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 like everybody else, is really, really worried about the stablecoin thing. And it appears that their strategy thus far has been to just start buying a crap ton of gold, right? And to offer maybe up an alternative to the U.S. system via just the crazy amount of gold that they're going to buy, that they are buying. And then the U.S. is on its path to, like I said, provide stablecoins to everyone in the world, which again is going to create a lot of sovereign bonds. It's going to create a lot of more dollars. And so for both of these systems, you're just going to see kind of this kind of debasement, right? So gold will do really well. and presumably Bitcoin will do really well. He predicted something like, I forgot what it was, but within 20, 30 years, easily $10,000 gold, $25,000 gold, and then if gold hits that, what would you expect Bitcoin to be at? And he left that unsaid, but he's a fairly conservative person, I would say. So for him to be saying numbers like that was quite surprising to me. But yeah, I mean, that if that's the future that we're going into, holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, look, I really am looking forward to derivatives on top of derivatives, opening up other markets. So, bonds collateralized by gold and Bitcoin, opening up debt markets and, further derivatives, Bitcoin not correlated with real estate, debt instruments. It's going to become a really interesting world. We're just really, and this goes back to the first thing you were talking about, Graham, that where are we in the cycle to, gain all that wealth for ourselves? And, if you've been in this for a minute, you can say, God, I'm in those last innings. You're not, this is the start of it. And, it's just different aspects. And if you go through like all of the different iterations, the answer to subprime was Bitcoin, and then, cryptocurrencies that were computer money. Then we saw the ICO craze, then we saw the NFT craze, and we saw the meme craze, and we saw the DeFi craze. And, we always just have these new things kind of emerging. And now what we're seeing is the institutional adoption phase. And where we pick up in those moments are really, I think, just starting over to figure out, what those successful kind of ventures can be if you stay curious about what's happening. And that's the part that's really interesting.
Maybe we could dive into that a little bit, because here's the angle that I'm thinking about right now as you were talking. So yeah, it's exciting to have institutions coming into Bitcoin and crypto. A lot of people a lot of gold bugs have talked for years about how the gold market was manipulated by what is it, gold futures, right? The futures market was like purposely, this was a sort of a
Paper gold.
intentionally designed mechanism in order to suppress the price of gold. And now some people are saying that same thing could be happening in the Bitcoin realm.
Wait, Graham, are you trying to tell me that financial markets can be corrupt? That there's corruption, in markets that have money which trades? Yeah, of course. I mean, that's why we have consumer protection organizations, out there to theoretically. Yeah, but that's one of the big problems, actually. When you think about the SEC and CFTC and these organizations that are meant to protect consumers, and the SEC and CFTC may be bad examples because they actually have really good people there that understand digital currencies pretty well. But across the board, I think there's kind of this lack of understanding, and that allows some of that manipulation to happen. And government's slow. When we see these events happen, they do study it, but they study it after the fact and not before it, so they can do a post-mortem on it. And when you have countries buying different versions of this asset, in these large increments, of course there's going to be corruption that happens. But it happens, it's not just with digital currencies. I mean, we've seen it with every asset on the face of the planet. I mean, if you look at subprime, they put a bunch of garbage, wrapped it up in a financial instrument, and then rated it and sold it. And it was just dog shit, as they said. And, that's manipulation. It's selling garbage and rating it high. So, I mean, that's not really surprising to me that there would be manipulation. And hopefully the government can catch up and create really good guardrails to deal with that, so we don't see a lot of it.
And then I think a lot of people also say, just let me
David
just get
has
this
an
last
opinion.
point in here, David, that maybe Bitcoin is uniquely suited to be inoculated to some extent against that type of manipulation, simply because of the fact that it's much easier than gold or stocks to take custody of, to actually take self custody of. So it's like a guardrail against derivatives on derivatives, and ending up with like these, I don't know, wrapped thing that doesn't exist. Actually, there's nothing backing it. Some people would point out that is like, yeah, a protection against the manipulation happening.
I'm a little skeptical of that, Graham, just from the recent past, 2020, 2021, in terms of that. Just people, I mean, it would require people to do things like take custody of Bitcoin. And I here's my wet blanket. I imagine a future where most Bitcoin, almost all of it, is in custodial, is in custody of like trusted third parties. And there'll be a very, very small fraction of it that is actually self-custody. But that aside, I always just say what Les was saying about like the regulators. It reminds me of kind of a common critique of government regulators, at least in the U.S. I imagine it's pretty much everywhere, but it seems to me the philosophy on on regulation, on how to regulate, is a bit of maybe the problem, which is you wait for something bad to happen, and then in all the debris afterwards, you set up laws and guardrails and rules and regulations. But the SEC and the CFTC, I think they've kind of basically explicitly said, we're not going to pre-regulate. We're not trying to pre-regulate things. We're basically going to wait until a lot of people lose money, and then we're gonna regulate. And there's been a lot of criticism about this way of approaching regulation.
Look, I have a lot of strong feelings on this, especially given my ex-wife is on the crypto task force, but we'll not talk about that for this, for this podcast. I think, during the Gensler days, you saw regulation by enforcement, and everyone got punished, and he went after the biggest companies he could, for whatever reason that he wanted to do that. To the credit of Paul Atkins and the people that they've brought in, and Hester Peirce, and the different people at the SEC, these are very well educated people that are trying to figure out parameters to keep innovation here. And it's the same thing at the CFTC. I mean, Carolyn Pham and Henry Jung and these guys, they're incredibly well informed, and you can, I mean, when have we ever seen at Treasury, you have Tyler Williams, in executive office, you have Patrick Witt, who replaced Bo Hines, and David Sachs. You have a lot of people that are crypto native, that really understand it, and I think do have good intentions to create those regulatory guardrails. Now, the problem with government is politics. So when we start to get into the politics of those who don't understand it, what we see is an attack. And the attack is the same old arguments we've always heard about the consumer protections around, digital currencies being used for fraud, or and it's all bullshit, right? It's just them really not digging into what these assets are, because the truth is, with track and trace companies like Chainalysis and TRM and Elliptic, and these guys have been established like since 2016, they can track bad actors. They can track kind of all the negatives that we hear about when that's connected to kind of digital currencies. So I'm optimistic with the regulatory side of things. I'm less optimistic with general understanding where it's necessary across all the federal agencies. And that's going to take a long time.
Maybe this is a good pivot to talk about the confiscated assets. I know you've got a lot of experience there. So you're saying basically there's just a lack of education. Is that the main problem with the confiscated assets?
Nope.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than that.
Okay.
So to give you a little bit of context, in 23, we did the RFI and RFP to manage the alternative assets that the federal government holds. Coinbase won Class 1, which are a lot of the big assets we look at. Bitcoin and ETH and XRP and all that. But, I've made a motto with our business that we love the garbage. And, during the implosion of FTX and a lot of those companies, we actually went out to all those bankruptcies and bought the really complicated altcoins. We knew about them. We knew the liquidity. We knew, how to deal with them. So we know how complex they are. The complexities of, why would a protocol want to buy a non-liquid token back? Well, if you understand anything about the issuance, you know why. So the nuance and depth of understanding that's required to win a contract like that at the federal level is really, really important. And so let me just start out by saying, this isn't one of those bitter grape situations with me. I don't give a shit if I have that contract or not. My real point is someone should have it that understands the asset class. So they put out this RFP, and one of the big problems in Washington is...
Sorry, Les, sorry, could I just take a step back? Because I find this really, really interesting. Could you just educate me a little more on the background of how this works? So RFP is what again?
Request for proposal.
And then, sorry. Thanks.
But what exactly is the request for proposal? Like, how is it structured? And then there's different bidders. Is there like one round of bidding? And I just would like a little background on this.
There's 2 rounds of bidding, but it starts with an RFI, which doesn't go to the RFP necessarily. And the RFI is a request for information. So what they do is they ask, the market, who understands.
Who's asking?
The U.S. Marshal Service is in charge.
Marshal Service, okay.
Of the RFI and RFP. So the way it works, let me get back up even further. And we're just talking about federal. We're not talking about states, which adds another layer of complexity. So on the federal side, you have the U.S. Marshal and you have the DOJ. And then underneath that, you have all these agencies that kind of kick up to either the Marshal or DOJ, whether that's FBI or CIA or ATF kicking up to DOJ. On the other side, it could be the Secret Service and IRS criminal investigators who did the Silk Road confiscation. That kicks up to the Marshal. The Marshal's job historically with other assets has been to do the request for proposal, where they go out to different bidders to handle the assets for them. So it's a public-private relationship. That's the process you go through. It's very kind of stringent, the way you kind of approach it and the way you present. And, you have to cover, how are you going to custody these assets? How are you going to liquidate these assets? How are you going to protect these assets? What are the security layers? And, Coinbase won class 1, which is all the big cap assets. Class 2 to 4.
And in this, do you have some kind of like liability if you fail at this?
Well, I mean, I think everyone has liability if they fail at it at a certain level, but do you mean personal liability or business liability?
Well, so I'm just saying, like say you're going to custody a bunch of Bitcoin and then it gets stolen from you.
Well, it probably wouldn't be us custodying it. It would be a qualified custodian. And, right now with digital currencies, there's not like a lot of insurance recourse at that scale. There's not a lot of people that are going to insure $20 billion of Bitcoin. So that's why they take their time being thoughtful about what those security protocols are. And, they really look for that kind of underlying technology, SOC 1, SOC 2, all of the stuff that is required to win one of those proposals. So the problem is, when we get into the first problem is, the government, U.S. Marshal in particular, is used to doing things a certain way, and they're reliant upon their subs that they work with. And those subs may or may not be qualified, but because they understand the process and processes, which are really complicated, they'll award to subs. So someone could actually win those contracts that doesn't have the first understanding of the asset class itself, but they have the understanding of the process to win. And that's
they knew how to win the test the classic SATs or whatever.
Yeah. When the test,
they knew how to write the test.
They know how to make the presentation look nice, right? They're really good at spreadsheets and whatever slide presentations.
And it's relationship based. If you've worked with someone since 2011, there's a pretty good chance they know you, and there's a pretty good chance that you might get that award. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're best qualified for a complicated asset class, and Senator Lummis has asked many times of the U.S. Marshal, how much Bitcoin are you holding? And the issue is they can't come up with an answer for a whole bunch of reasons that are really clear to me. And that's, when you look at an asset that has transaction fees, gas fees, forks, airdrops, if we go to other currencies, and then you start to think about things like seizures, where you have this thing called equitable sharing. Now, what that is if there's a federal seizure in a state, those assets used to be liquidated into fiat. The Bitcoin used to be liquidated in fiat, and they share it with all the departments that participated in that seizure. So then you work in forks, airdrops. How is anyone getting an accurate accounting if the people that are doing the seizures don't have universal software to address what the value of those assets are? And what's really lost in the whole process is the benefit, if they could go about this in an appropriate way, is the benefit comes back to the state, the federal government. So one of the things they do with T-bills, which you mentioned earlier, pre-forfeiture, which means before the court case, before it gets forfeited, if the criminal loses, is with T-bills, with seizures of cash, they'll put it into T-bills. T-bills will generate interest, and the federal government will keep that. Well, cryptocurrency is dynamic. We can generate much more with seized cryptocurrencies. So that pre-forfeiture cryptocurrency that sits there that we're not generating yield with, it's wasted because it could go to government programs.
Right.
It could go to, deployment of things that we want to solve for, but no one's thought of that, right? And post-forfeiture, there's things we can do with that to create liquidity too. So I think, we're just seeing the first steps of what these digital reserves are meant to look like and what they represent. And I think, there's just no way that the agencies or the subs that they're awarding these contracts to think about things like that. They don't know who a qualified custodian is. They couldn't tell you that BitGo and Anchorage are the qualified custodians out there, and that Anchorage has an OCC license, or Luca is a dashboard provider. So sorry, I'll get rolling on this, guys. Yeah. It won't stop.
Yeah. So these subs are, most of these subs, I take it, have nothing to do with or have no prior experience with crypto. Is that correct?
They're technical development firms that are building to spec, and it's very difficult to step in and start to build to spec and not have a baseline understanding of where this all started from. And forget about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the easy one. What about when we get to Hedera or HBAR? We get to Polkadot, and understanding the nuances of all those tokens and the history of them, and who was involved in the creation. I guarantee you there's no sub in Washington that knows who the fuck Gavin Wood is, and that's just the nature of it.
Do these subs, I guess they don't really talk to each other very much? Is there like does the Marshal Service not have like a ledger or whatever, a spreadsheet of some sort that kind of tabulates what they have? Like, because I still don't quite understand why they don't have a very accurate count of how much Bitcoin and everything else that they have. When I first
started interacting with the Marshal Service, their liquidation procedure was one Marshal logging into Coinbase. So when we talk about how these assets are held and stored, when you have a crime and that crime has a ledger and that other crime has a laptop and that other crime has cryptocurrency of all sorts on exchanges, how do you think they're tracking it? Do you think they're sophisticated enough to understand, what Meteora is? Or, Magic Eden? There's just no fucking way. And that's kind of the point. That's how they don't track it.
So do you have any idea? Do you have any feeling for how much Bitcoin the government has? Like, I'm in the news, okay? And I've been reporting on this for a long time.
Yeah, it's about $20 billion right now, give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I hear wildly different reports. Like,
$20 billion. There's actually a great website that I'm going to forget the name of right now that tracks it pretty close. Arkin or Arc.
Okay.
I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's Arkham. Yeah.
They're pretty
so that's trust. You think that's roughly correct?
it's roughly correct. Yeah. But again, seizures don't stop. So, the numbers increase, and, we haven't really calculated in the state aspect. So I have met with 23 attorney generals. I've been to 15 states meeting with treasurers, controllers, auditors, trying to get an understanding, of where a lot of these assets sit. And, there's just no uniform approach to handling these assets yet. And we have that with every other asset class, including gold, because you have the private public relationship with a BlackRock or a Blackstone or a Bank of America. So they do that part for them because they're the experts. Now, the problem is the US Marshal Service looked for a technical solution when they should have been looking for a multitude of technical, financial, and really software solutions to get ahead of this at scale.
So, Les, what's the real danger here? I think one thing you mentioned is that like the assets that are seized are just not being utilized to the extent that they could be. Beyond that, is it that somebody might just like hit the sell button?
Well, I mean, we see that all the
and then
time.
they're wasted.
Here's a real danger. I've been in crypto a long time. I swear to God, I could go through. Yeah, I did mention something about the liquidation happening. Here's a danger: liquidation happening in Germany and the U.S. at the same time, crashing the price. That's one thing, because they didn't talk to each other about it. But like I said, I've been in crypto in a long time. I have a lot of computers laying around. I swear to God, I could get on a computer and still find fucking crypto I didn't even realize I have. And if that's happening with me personally, then how the fuck is the government tracking this when you have, all of these criminals being arrested across the country in every single state where there's these federal arrests in states, and that doesn't even account for what the federal government's holding. So
yeah, also on their smartphones now, right? Like, I mean, you could imagine a criminal having $100,000 in crypto on their smartphone.
there was a story.
Right?
I swear to God, I went to this one state and I was meeting with an attorney general, and besides asking me what Bitcoin was, this is the craziest thing. In a seizure, everything was in evidence, and these guys were saying, something that's happened otherwise to someone else, that when it went into that evidence locker, someone fucking cleaned it out from their living room. And these guys go to court to get a court order to stop the transfer of those assets, not realizing that someone with the seed phrase is going to transfer it out regardless of some court order. So it's not the same. A court order is not going to do it for you. So that comes down to training, and that's one of the things we actually give away for free. We hired a bunch of law enforcement guys, and I want to be able to train these guys to say, if you're going to have these assets, the seed phrase bad, don't give it to anyone. Make sure you get it. And the minute
there was you guys may have seen this a few months ago. There was something that's going around about some guy who got arrested, and the body cam showed his seed phrase, and the body cam was publicly posted, and people just noticed that and cleared out his account.
I mean, that's it, right? And these are little simple things. If you get the ledger, or whatever the exchange, transfer the assets to one of your own wallets. Really simple if you have someone that's kind of dedicated to do it. And we always hear about, I mean, look, it's great. Blockchain has a ledger, we can follow and track all that stuff. But what we don't have is like the processes in place yet to figure out the public-private relationships. And this administration is pushing so hard and so fast that, there's 7 states that accept crypto for taxes. 3 states have passed legislation to buy it. So this is moving incredibly fast. So we're going to be a state that accepts it to pay taxes. We're going to know where to kind of put it. But how does that work with, civil seizures, unclaimed property, another area? Do you know how much crypto is in unclaimed property? And when we get into, achieving it back to the states, those processes, there's no processes. So it's not that there's a danger, Graham, from what you said earlier. I think what it is a missed opportunity for things like pensions, which are upside down, or university budgets that are suffering. And in a state where we already have this asset sitting there that we can lean into, we could actually do good with it. That's kind of the point. Just by the simplest shit, put it in fucking DeFi and give it to the university that's in that state. Give the proceeds from what's been seized on that 100 million, 500 million that they're holding, and give it to the fucking university because it's there anyway. And you're not selling the underlying asset.
That's you make it. I think you paint probably a realistic picture of how the U.S. is kind of missing an opportunity, and there's like a lot of there needs to be a lot more coordination and processes built up. Is there a country that's doing it better than us, or is everyone just kind of doing this badly or worse?
Well, better than us. I mean, look, there's countries for a long time. Europe was ahead of us with MiCA and all the regulatory stuff, but government is government. And
I mean, I'm specifically talking about this like confiscated assets thing.
No, I know. I don't think there is, because we see a lot of the RFPs that are out there. And, I don't think anyone is yet really handling it the right way, because what we're talking about is people. And government people don't come from the school of crypto. They come from the school of government, or whatever their background is. So a U.S. Marshal doesn't go to crypto school before they become a U.S. Marshal. And that's the same in any country you're in. So you have people that are qualified to be a U.S. Marshal, but you don't necessarily have people qualified to understand the nuances of complicated currency. Why is it that with every other asset, like real estate, for instance, that's confiscated and seized at the federal level, the U.S. Marshal isn't saying, fuck it, we're going to sell it ourselves, and going out there with a sign and, yacht for sale. They're hiring professionals to handle those assets in either auctions or, other ways. So why the fuck wouldn't they do that with crypto when it's more complicated than selling a boat or a house or jewelry?
It's also more liquid. I can imagine, like you mentioned earlier, that there's a process for gold. I bet you money that a lot more criminals are going to be having Bitcoin than they're going to have bars of gold. So,
I mean, yeah, it's easier to carry a ledger, but harder to get into it if you don't have the password. So with a piece of gold, you can carry it out, and and look, I mean, the government has that down. There's U.S. auction houses, like USA auctions and shit like that, and they sell lots of gold that's been confiscated all the time. But that's not like a U.S. entity. That's a commercial entity that works with the U.S. government.
Is it just a matter of time that they get their ducks in a row here, because this is a new technology? It's sort of inevitable that they're going to mess it up, or is there something malicious here? They're just like dismissing this tech, or or what can be done?
Well,
is there anything that can be done to speed up improving the process?
Look, they fight the process because they're afraid of the underlying information that's required to deal with the process. I don't think it's malicious. You'll hear that it's malicious. I think it's ignorance in a lot of ways. But I think, yeah, like anything else, if you stick to it, and they're going to have pressure to stick to it over time, maybe not in our time, maybe not as fast as we want. Like, I came from the music business, believe it or not finance, none of that bullshit. And, the thing about the music business is copyrights, for instance. If I want to figure out who owns a song, I have to go to Google, I have to go to Wikipedia, I have to maybe go to BMI or one of the performance royalty societies. I have to call a publisher, and then I have to call 3 friends. And I still might not know who the 14 writers on that hip hop song are. So I guess I can trust the US Copyright Service to tell me, right? Fuck no. They're so outdated, with the way the transfers have happened of these catalogs, they can't keep up with the catalog transfers. So guess what? Catalogs will continue to transfer, and the US Copyright Office will continue to not catch up. My hope is, because you can actually, well, I mean, copyrights generate a lot of money, but we don't hold them at the US government level. We hold a lot of crypto. So my hope is that the pressure from this administration on the people who have to make those decisions will eventually get to a place where they have the right public-private relationship to be able to make that decision. See, tech pissed me off today, so I'm just like hot on everything.
That's awesome. Yeah.
You
It's
know?
awesome. You were very calm and nice until you started talking about your relationship and work with government. I think that's a
Yeah,
very common
it
thing.
just took
You
me
should
now.
see me when I go to the DMV. I
Yeah, I learned that
funny.
you can actually call someone to do that for you.
Can you really?
Oh, there's
Yeah,
a
I hate
hack
DMV
right
lines.
there.
Yeah, I hate DMV lines, man.
Life hack right there. There's the real alpha.
Yeah, man. No, like, no DMV, no post office.
No post office. No, God, no.
Bad.
Graham.
All right, guys. I think let's move towards wrapping it up here.
Graham has shit to do. He announced that at the beginning.
Hold on. I just wanted to highlight a couple of comments, Graham, if it's cool with you.
Oh, okay.
It looks like
we got comments. All right.
yeah, our gold talk really kind of electrified people. It shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, it's a little surprising that a crypto Bitcoin podcast and the thing that got the best comments, organic comments, were about gold. But I mean, there it is. But yeah, this I think is so. I see it all the time in and around crypto and around gold bugs. Gold is eternal. Gold is real. As much as we like Bitcoin, it's not a real thing, and confidence can drop at any point.
Well,
Yeah. Oh, thoughts, Les. Go ahead.
I mean, shit. Confidence can drop at any point on anything. I mean,
On anything.
confidence drops every day. The way I feel about my dog when he bites me.
Yeah. And what percentage of gold investors actually have the bullion in their house? It's got to be
Very, very, very,
a
very,
small
very little.
amount. Yeah.
Incredibly small. In fact, I mean, like, even the biggest holders of gold, they don't hold the gold. That would be unsafe, right? They have them in Swiss mountains,
Especially the biggest holders of gold. Yes.
Yeah. But also, like, you saw this. I was going to say this much earlier, but because you guys were, anyway, we were talking about the use of gold. You remember the Canadian trucker protest thing, right? And
Yeah.
so people were sending Bitcoin, but they also were like trying to give gold and stuff as well. And the truckers were like, we can't use your Bitcoin and we can't use your gold. What are we going to do with this? What are we going to go to the grocery store and like, hey, here's an ounce of gold. Can I buy, a lot of stuff? And they would have.
Yeah. Canada's
Bitcoin. So
post-apocalyptic hellscape, but not quite that level just yet, I guess.
Come on. Canada was on the forefront. Come on, man. RBC was one of the first banks to ever adopt crypto. I mean, I want to be the first guy to bash Canada. I like Rush and I like hockey. I even like the Tragically Hip. So, other than, I don't like the Canadian content music laws that allowed anyone to be a musician, but Canada was super forward with digital currencies, especially Toronto in the early days. Some of the, Ripple Swell was in Toronto, like 16. Canada was pretty thought forward.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened to Canada?
What?
But
Yeah. So the
also,
truckers wanted cash. They wanted cash. They wanted
cash, right? Yeah, they wanted cash. And this is my point is that a lot of people say about gold, and even to a lesser extent Bitcoin, but specifically about gold, this is going to be, your hedge against the apocalypse. I don't know, or a hedge against like government overreach. To me, this was a clear case of like the Canadian government slammed down the ability for people to buy stuff and pay for stuff. and there was no recourse, right? You can't use gold to do any transactions that would help the protesters. So anyway, so that's one comment. The other is from Corbin, our Canadian CEO. Just a little background, Les. He's Canadian and he hates Canada. He has nothing but bad things to say about it.
I wouldn't put it that far that he hates Canada.
I mean,
if you're in the comments, Corbin,
self-hating Canadian.
He's self-hating, but he said, and this is, honestly, I'm thinking about this. This might be true for me too. He said, my gold trade this year has been beating every one of my altcoin trades. That's crazy, and it might be true for me as well, right? The gold that I have has been, like what, Ethereum? It's definitely beat Ethereum. I think it's probably beat
on that
Solana.
Note, we talked last week, which is going to hit $5,000 first, Ethereum or gold? And last week I said, for surely it'll be Ethereum. But now I'm not so sure about that.
I don't know. If you bought Ethereum for 50 cents in 2014.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's 3,000 or 5,000. For sure.
It's all perspective.
All right. And then the last comment, this is from Aurelian. I think this is our Aurelian. Shout out to the frog. He had a question for Les. He said, basically saying, will blockchain make the music copyright thing more straightforward? Like, can blockchain actually help in this regard, or is it just too mired in bureaucracy?
Fuck, poor Graham. He wants to leave. Dude, so let me just put it this way. Corbin, that's his name, is a self-hating Canadian. I'm a self-hating fucking music executive. Like, I fucking hate the music business. And, the thing about it is, while you have content owners that don't allow for transparency, it doesn't matter if you had the greatest technology in the world that could show you everything. So the answer is, in theory, yeah, it would make it great. But the people that control the narrative and ownership of all of the content catalog wide won't allow for it. So the answer doesn't matter. And it's unfortunate, because it could solve a lot of problems if the people that gave it, shit actually gave a shit.
How? Okay, sorry, Graham. This is just one last comment. Les, feel free not to answer this, because this is probably you're gonna want to go off on it. But you would think that after,
take your time,
you would
Les.
think after Napster and all this, that would have kicked the music industry into like a kind of innovative mode, right? Because they had to catch up after that and everything like that. But what you're talking about now seems like they didn't learn anything from that whole ordeal.
So I was at the record companies kind of during the Napster days, and I loved it because I thought Sean and Sean were brilliant. I always loved innovation, and it was an easier way to get music. And what the record companies should have done is embraced it and brought it in. But what they did is they fought it and threw it out, and actually fucking litigated it. These poor kids at the time coming up with this great technology. Now, there's a lot of parallels between digital currency being peer-to-peer and music being peer-to-peer. I mean, it's really a similar concept. So, if we take a look at where the record business started, it was completely integrated all across the board. They created the music, they created the equipment that played it, they created the experiences, and they owned every bit of that fucking chain. And now when we look at it, Spotify isn't really, all the streaming services saved the music business. There was a decline in the music business. And why would you fight a technology that gives people what they want? And the problem is incentives. When we take a look at the incentives of executives in Silicon Valley versus incentives of people who work in music companies, they're not even the same. So they're not being incentivized to do the best work they can to participate in solution. They're gatekeepers that keep everyone out of solution. So they can see the greatest technology tomorrow and never adopt it. And it's unfortunate. I'm going to stop there because I'll just fucking keep going.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I think, Graham, we're gonna get some good clips out of this episode. I've got some ideas.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, nice.
Hey, Graham, what do you got to do? Because you seem incredibly busy tonight. So I'm actually kind of
Oh, just it's
oh,
yeah.
you got a date?
No, just 9 to 5 stuff.
Got-
You know how it is.
Got a hot date.
It's 8:13, which means where are you?
It's noon here.
Oh,
Yeah,
We're both
noon
in
on Friday.
yeah, I was
Japan
gonna say,
land.
I'm sensing Asia. Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Got to get out and
Yeah.
go to a maid cafe or something. I don't know.
He's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
he's the head maid.
Akibara.
Yeah, I do the rock, paper, scissors, and then I'll scoop out the wax out of your ear. Just give me 10,000 yen.
What can I tell you? I'm a very curious person about culture. Okay.
All right, let's.
It's really nice to meet both of you.
Yeah, let's wrap it up here.
Definitely.
Les Borsai,
Great.
thanks so much. Anything you want to plug before we wrap it up, Les?
No, why would I ever want to plug anything? I'd just rather like hang and talk.
Okay, nice.
Plugs.
Love it. All right. Thank you so much, Les, for your insights, and David as well. Thanks everyone for listening. That's it for us. Have a great week.